Believe it or not, that actually used to be an icon on there, so you just go, you read over the top, and that's why I'm, because I was using an older version. Okay, so it wasn't just a blonde joke. But as long as we're here, why am I not doing a geeky presentation? Because it's not pretty when blondes do crypto. And I'm like, double XOR is like twice as strong as XOR? Okay, that's the only crypto joke I know. Okay, so why am I saying, is anybody listening? Well, there was a joke there. Obviously, when you do crypto, you don't want people to be listening or reading. That's the whole point to doing it. But part of this has to do with kind of what my function is at Oracle. I have wonderful technical people who work for me who explain things in small words to me, which was really helpful because while I have an engineering degree, it's not computer science. I'm not a mathematician. I actually find this area really interesting, mostly because I like languages nobody speaks anymore. So I read books about how they figured out how linear B worked and how dead languages were translated. So it's very interesting to me, and I'm lucky that I have people who work for me who can explain the nuances of this to me. Now, one of the things I do in my job is I stress I'm not a lobbyist, but I do spend a lot of time reviewing proposed regulations or changes to things and spend a lot of time tearing my hair out because in some cases things are not always well expressed or they're not mindful of business realities. And I know a lot of people think businesses are, greedy and evil and lazy and we never want to do anything better. And it's not, it really isn't true because it's actually in our economic interest to do things better. But it is true that most of us, I think most of us, no matter what your job is, you really want to know if I'm responsible for X, I want to know what X is. I want to know what the parameters are, and I want to be able to know that I did X, to the best of my ability and to satisfaction. In crypto, fortunately, this is obviously a very important area because it's one of those areas, and we tell our developers this all the time, and that's why we don't let them do their own crypto. It's very easy to get wrong and very hard to get right. I'm actually glad that in the last few years we've morphed from, in the past we would do FIPS evaluations or certifications, and it wasn't really mandatory. Well, it kind of is, but it isn't, and you do them, and you might get credit, you might not get credit for them. I'm really happy we've kind of moved to the no waivers world, because if you're going to put the expense as a business of doing this, you want maximum leverage. And frankly, while this isn't the only important area of security, it really is one area where you definitely want to get it right. Very, very important, so that's good. But having said that, what is my agenda? Well, it's not just about the crypto. I think most of us know that, but I'll explain a little more. Economics rules the world. I got a very pricey MBA degree in the past, and what I tell people is the two most important things I got out of that were economics, macroeconomics, and business law, because economics rules the world. It rules every decision, even things you didn't even know that you made are based on economics, certainly if you're a business. And can we talk? I'll explain what that means, mostly about communications, and a small proposal. So this is going to be a short presentation. I don't want to say impactful. Oops, back up. Yes. Okay, it's not just about the crypto. Yes, does your bashed poodle have heartbleed? If you're laughing, you know what I mean by that. This has been, everybody talks about digital Pearl Harbor, and that is the most overused, analogy. But we have certainly had a bleeding, that's a technical term, wake-up call, and no pun intended, over the problems we've had in third-party libraries in about the past 6 months. It has been, technical term, effing nightmare. And so why is this such a, well, what does that have to do with cryptographic module validation? It doesn't, but it isn't about the crypto. You can have really good crypto, very well assessed, you did it properly, 2 gold stars for you, but people think the internet is fundamentally broken. And part of the reason the internet is fundamentally broken, or that perception exists, is because of a lot of the problems in the, okay, Bash wasn't one of them, but Poodle and Heartbleed, the cryptographic libraries that are supposed to be protecting all of us. And this was a wake-up call for a lot of people. Let me tell you what a nightmare this was. There are good, no, step back a bit. There are good business reasons why people don't roll their own crypto. They use somebody else's libraries. Part of it, as I mentioned, is it's very hard to get that right. You don't want people rolling their own. Makes good business sense. I can either build everything from scratch. When you build a house, you're not usually going out and growing your own trees for the lumber, right? You assemble it. Some things are already assembled for you. So it's really enables the innovation that have allowed so many businesses to thrive and so many companies to build code. You can get really good libraries from somebody else and put them in your code, and you don't have to build everything from scratch. This is a positive. Unfortunately, 5 years ago, you could use a really old library, and it was not a problem, right? Unless there was a business reason to say, hey, we've got a new whiz-bang widget in this library, there's no reason to move to a new version, or wasn't until recently. And there are multiple problems with this bash and heartbleed issue that really boils down to people use so many third-party libraries. They sort of take it for granted that it's there, but they don't know exactly what is there. I mean, exactly this library, you gotta make sure you're licensed for it, by the way, and which version. And that turned out to be a big, again, effing headache when this all hit. We have thousands of products, thousands, and clouds. And I would love to tell you as a company, while we have very good processes, certainly before we ship product and so on and so forth, knowing we have the licenses for things, that's all great. I'd love to tell you that in a day we knew exactly which products were affected by Heartbleed. I would love to tell you that. It wasn't a day, it was like 3 weeks. It was awful. I'm sure other people here in Nottingham, you went through the same thing. You thought you knew what you had, but did you really? You didn't. So it's 10 p.m., do you know where your code is? You don't know where your code is. You don't know exactly where it is. You have things embedded within things, embedded with other things, to try to find out exactly what you have and are you vulnerable. To answer the customer questions was a nightmare. So this whole process, again, it's not about the crypto. Those libraries were the underpinning of a lot of the security, and they had problems in them. And the businesses had problems of knowing whether they're vulnerable or not and where those libraries are. So, I'm sure we're not the only company. We're putting a lot of work into, we need better tracking for this. We're going to improve our third-party license tracking tool. We're probably going to use some automation just to be able to scan things, make sure we didn't miss anything. Oh, and one other one, we already changed this. I'll explain why this is important in a minute. Before somebody ships a product, you got to make sure that library, any library, is going to be supported for the life of the product it's embedded in. Because what you don't want to have happen for anything, but particularly for crypto, well, it's very nice there's a problem in this library, but the open source or third-party vendor we got it from doesn't support that anymore, so we can't get a patch. We're really sorry that thing's vulnerable and my grandmother can break into it, but there's no way to get a patch for it because we're relying on a third party and the third party doesn't patch it anymore. Oops. All right, so again, not about the crypto. It's about whatever you put in, you better know what's there, and if you got to know where it is, what it is, track it, and if there's a problem, in fact, you got to go out and look for these things, make sure that those things are getting fixed. Too much information. The disclosure on these things was horrible. It's really terrible. I mean, most people don't think about that. Oh, look, I found a problem. Oh, isn't this wonderful? Let me tell all my hacky little friends about that. That's not very constructive. People need a chance to respond. And most of us who've been doing this realize if you just blab early, all it does is create a big fat problem. And on all kinds of levels. People are jumping out the window, you have customers calling, you can either fix the problem or answer questions about it, but you usually can't do both in parallel. What you really want to do is, number one job is to fix the problem for customers. And that's anybody, whether and so anybody, if you're working on finding vulnerability, please follow responsible disclosure, and that means realistically people need a chance to fix these things. And not enough eyes. I'm sorry, to me, I know this is almost a near religious fervor issue with some people. And I'm kind of munging 3 and 4 together. I'm not down on open source at all. I just got done saying, having libraries that people can use and build businesses on, that's all really positive. But it's not a religious issue, it's a business issue. And business means it has to be reliable, it has to have good assurance, it has to be worthy. Personally, I don't like it when people throw patches over the wall every 2 days because no one can consume them fast enough. And this whole myth of many eyes, there aren't many eyes looking at it. They're not. Most vendors use static analysis tools on the code they're using. That's just kind of standard practice now. I don't know if that happens for open source. So again, it's not a religious issue, it's a business issue. So what you need is good, clean, reliable, good patch, good disclosure policies for anything that's third party, but particularly for these libraries. Because if you talk to the average person on the street, they know there's some problem, they know it has to do maybe with securing protocols, but they don't know much about it. So the whole value of anything you did for the cryptographic piece, it just got blown out the window because people think it doesn't matter. It does matter, of course. So yeah, business, not religion. It's really not about the crypto at some point. Because frankly, you know, and I'm really a bad hacker, to say the least, if you can find another way to break in, you're not going to break the crypto. You're just going to break in that way. And it matters to us because the value of what we do is unfortunately diminished in the public sphere if the rest of this stuff is really breakable. Oops, next. Oops. Yeah, sorry. There we go. I knew I was ahead of myself. I just love economics. I mean, I'm not a formulaic person, but I find different ways to apply this. And particularly when I have to go back, when I see how people are proposing to use corporate resources for things. So what is kind of the one thing I wish I could impart on people? Time, money, and qualified people are always constrained resources. People think, oh, you can go hire somebody else. You're just lazy and greedy and you don't want to hire. No, that's not it. Try finding them. I got hackers who work for me, ethical hackers. Ethical meaning if they break into our payroll system, they can change my title but not my salary. That's how I got to be CSO. Anyway, it's very hard to find qualified people. So when somebody asks us to do more, you can't always go out and find more money, time, or people, particularly in the security realm. I think most of us know that. But here's another one, the software market realities. I'll explain why this matters to FIPS in a moment. Newer is actually better. I'm sure people think, oh, you're just trying to get me to move to the latest version because you want to charge me money. No, actually it's because we don't fix everything on old versions. Think about that. Again, it's not just about the crypto. We find 87% of vulnerabilities, or security vulnerabilities ourselves on our products. And we fix stuff going forward. We fix it on some old versions, but not all old versions. I've had customers who are running on, I'm not making this up, Oracle 723. This is a few years ago. I want a patch for that. God almighty, couldn't get a patch for that. Got to tell you. Really can't. You need to be on a new version. So why does that matter? Because even if you have, you have a customer who says, I got to run FIPS certified version, the reality is there may be other problems with products, and we want customers to be on newer versions. They have to be, or they're not going to get fixes for things in all cases, and that puts them at risk. They might have really lovely crypto, yeehaw, but they're not going to get, they're going to be on versions that are likely to be vulnerable. We don't even analyze all old versions. And we publish this, we have a support policy. I'm sure we're no different from other vendors. You cannot realistically fix every single thing on every old version, even if you wanted to, even if you thought it was the best use of your resources, because it may require an architectural change you can't make ex post facto. And reality is customers will not apply a patch as big as the city of Cleveland. So, there's just only so much you can do. So newer is better. That's what I tell people. Newer versions, we're better at this, we know more. Crypto, sure. And why does that matter? Because if we can't get our FIPS, products that have gone through FIPS approved, if it's sitting in somebody's queue for 6 months, we have customers who are on old versions that are probably kind of screwed. Screwed is a technical term. So that kind of gets back to my next point, is the net time value of money. I understand, believe me, I understand that things take time. I'd love to tell you that my group was the most responsive, but like everyone else, we got this much to do and this many people. But when it takes us 6 months or more to actually get the little gold star, that diminishes the value of that certificate, because it has a time to live. That product's only going to be supported so long. So if you cut out 6 months, that doesn't sound like a lot. It actually is a lot in the life cycle of the product. So vendors spend a lot of money to get this stuff done, and then the value of it's diminished. We have customers who want to move to new versions, there might be new features they want, new security features. They can't. They're stuck on those old versions. And we're still sitting around going, da 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 da. Okay, when am I getting my gold star? 6 weeks, great. 6 months, No, that can't happen. That's not good enough. And by the way, again, I said I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not a lobbyist, but I have gone up to the Hill in the past to try to get more money for NIST. So I'm happy to do that. If you feel like the issue is, we'd love to do it, but budgets are being cut. I understand. I think that's a really good use of, if you need more money or more people to get that stuff done faster, I'm happy to go up and talk to my government affairs people. I think that's a really good use of taxpayer money because this is important. I'm glad that we have to do this stuff. That's good. We want to get it right. I know that it takes time. You want to make sure lab didn't do a sloppy job. Got that? No problem. But six weeks we think most people could probably live with, but 6 months is just, we just can't. It just diminishes the value for us. That's the business reality, the time value of money. So the marketplace decides what wins, even in crypto. That shouldn't be obvious, but I am a veteran. I tell people I've been at Oracle 25 years, 26. I joined when I was 5. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. Good luck with that. But I'm a veteran. Actually, I am a veteran. I was a naval officer. But I'm a veteran of what happens when even very well-intended, really smart people try to dictate to the marketplace. Anybody remember Clipper Chip? Clipper Chip cookies? Clipper Chip cookies. That just failed miserably. And there were lots of problems with it. One of my personal favorites was it was designed to be single-threaded. Oh, man, nobody has a single-threaded database. The whole point is lots of people connect at once, not just one connection. But it didn't work. And so, well, why do you care? I mean, shoot, companies make mistakes. Yeah, we do. We make some buttes. I worked on some products that were, woof, dogs. But when we make a mistake and we invest in something and the market doesn't want it, we did a crappy job, you know who suffers? Well, we do, because we lost money. We didn't reap our investment. Sometimes maybe our shareholders might, probably not. I mean, we do lots of research. Some things pan out, some don't. But if the government decides what you have to do, I'm also a veteran of trusted systems, we spend a lot of money doing that, and they don't buy it, and we waste our investment. And we could have done so many more productive things with that money. That's hard. It's really hard. So if companies make a mistake, they pay for it. The government decides to push something, and it's not what the market will accept, no worky poo. And a lot of people pay for it. And none of us really have enough resources to do that. We don't want to be doing that. And that kind of gets back to moral hazard. What is a moral hazard? Most of us know what this is, even if you don't know the term is. You know all those people who bought houses they knew they couldn't afford and thought they'd flip them, and the housing market melted down? And you know that those people got forgiven a lot of their loans? So they got rewarded for bad risk-taking, because there are other people who didn't do that. They bought what they could afford. Maybe the price of their house went up, maybe it didn't go down, but they didn't walk away from the mortgage. My, that sounds harsh, doesn't it? It is harsh. It's a moral hazard. You reward people for bad risk-taking. People should pay for bad risk-taking. So that's kind of back to, in a way, back to point 3. And then there's no disrespect intended. When governments decide things, and if they make a wrong guess and they try to push it on industry, and industry feels like they have to do it, if the market won't accept it, and well, really the market's going to win, it costs a lot of people a lot of money. But the government doesn't pay for that, really. It's the companies who did it that do. So, you know, again, positives. I'm really glad that we went to the world of deciding what algorithms are good with an open way, you know, open transparency. We get better cryptographic algorithms. The U.S. can't monopolize. They don't, as good as I'm sure our cryptologists and cryptographers are, they don't have a market lock. So moving to that model was really good. And I think, you know, FIPS per se is narrow. It's, I think moving to the ISO world is even better. That's really good. I'm glad to see that happening. And this is something most people want to know, that their cryptography has been well done. So narrow, targeted, make sure you did your jobs properly in this area, that's to the good. When it gets beyond that scope, possibly a problem. So can we talk, there's a perfectly lovely song. I love the Great American Songbook, and there's a lovely song. George Gershwin wrote the music, his brother Ira wrote the lyrics. Let's call the whole thing off. You say potato, I say potato. In this case, it's NIST says potato, NIAP says potato. Potato, potato, tomato, tomato, let's call the whole thing off. We still have issues where one entity says one thing and the other says something else, and they're not reconciled, and that creates a problem. I know it's not intentional, but it still happens. You know, for example, one of my team was reminding me, okay, we're supposed to do EAL2 evaluations for, you know, FIPS, for software, and they're supposed to be an evaluated operating system, except that the protection profile for operating systems has been yanked by NIAP. So this is an impossibility. How can we possibly be, and the ones that are there are old. So, and this NIAP isn't interested in evaluating operating systems anymore. And yet, you know, they seem to want us to take cryptographic mechanisms from underlying platforms. It's really very confusing. My little fuzzy blonde head is hurting. So I understand that they're different entities, and I also understand that large organizations may have conflicting requirements. To give you one example from my own history, I was a naval officer in a previous life. In those days, if you were female and your dress uniform, you had to carry a handbag and either wear or carry white gloves. Different era. Part of the uniform, if you didn't have the handbag and the white gloves, you were out of uniform. Except I was in the Civil Engineer Corps, so I had to go to construction sites to look at contracts that I was managing. And on construction sites, you usually wear a hard hat, and they want you to wear steel-toed shoes. Well, let me tell you, there are no steel-toed pumps. I looked. So I'm sorry, is there anything more Looney Tunes than carrying white gloves on a construction site, which is pretty darn dirty? I couldn't possibly comply with uniform requirements because, you know, the construction regulation said one thing and uniform regulation said another. Oi, I'm not going to, you know, you say potato, I say potato, I can't comply. And that's where we are with some of this FIPS and NIAP, OSPP, but it's been yanked. You can't get there from here. And so just nuke it, you know, if that's the case, then nuke the requirement. Noting, of course, that I don't know how you're going to get trust in an underlying operating system. How is somebody going to establish that without that? I don't know how you get there from here without a lot of money and expense and time and vetting. That's just not going to work. And that does lead to the, you know, I love Monty Python. It's so applicable to so many things. And I think next to the Spanish Inquisition sketch, the Knights Who Say Ni is one of my favorite ones, but it does lead to this moments of, you know, we, the Knights Who Say Ni, require you to cut down all the trees in the forest with a herring. There's no way you're going to cut down the trees in the forest with a herring. And that's kind of where we are with some of these conflicting requirements. Please, you know, powers that be, please talk to either talk to one another, hold hands, go off into the, you know, the sunset together, or get a divorce. Because right now it's kind of this, you're kind of talking, but you're not talking, and it's really hard for industry. We're trying to do what you want, but it's really difficult when it's not consistent. Okay, and last but not least, the entropy of entropy requirements. This really makes my brain hurt. Okay, it makes my brain hurt this is for a lot of reasons. One of them is, there really isn't any teeth in what constitutes entropy. And the only example I could think of was, I think it was Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was, it was a court case about pornography. And he said, well, I can't define it, but I know what it is when I see it. So it's the only time that entropy and pornography have anything in common. Can't really define it, but I know what it is when I see it. But that's a problem for industry because we all understand how important that element is. I mean, I remember, I think it was one of the first SSL implementations. I think it was Netscape, or 2 out of 3 parts of the randomness were, shall we say, not so random. Big problem. So we all understand the value of that, but there needs to be some teeth in it. It can't just be whatever the Inspector General thinks is enough entropy. There have to be some metrics about it. There has to be some teeth in it. It can't just be, I know it when I see it. And last but not least, I don't understand why NIAP is going around and putting entropy into their applications protection profile. Okay, I know you guys are really good at crypto, God bless you, but really stay out of it. Because what the heck does that have to do with a protection profile? That's in the FIPS realm. That's where it belongs. I don't really care whether, you know, sticking stuff in memory is random or not. I actually don't want it to be random, frankly. You want to know where things are. So, I mean this in the nicest possible way. Please butt out. Unless there's a good business reason you can articulate for why entropy needs to be a part of protection profile. I don't understand it. I mean, I do mean butt out respectfully, because it's going to create the same kind of problem. You say potato, I say potato. Boy, you know what? I got to tell you, I got to cut out the carbs. I'm just cutting them out. It's just okay. So modest proposal, and we can sort of finish up here. You're going to say, well, this is supposed to be conclusions, but you're introducing a new topic. Yeah, I slimed it in there. I understand that people kind of sometimes are limited, you know, budget realities, and I can't necessarily get a new body in, or I can't find the person, so I want to get a consultant in. And there are times when you need to do that. I have a surge in something. We do that. My ethical hackers are really good, but occasionally we will hire outsiders to come in and augment them temporarily. And then we'll hoover their little brains dry, make sure we learn the lessons. So I understand the value using consultants. But I am concerned, back to my going up to the Hill and talking about more money for NIST, that I see more consultants, just in general, being used for things. And people think consultants are neutral. They're not. They're not neutral. Why are they not neutral? Because if you can make a standard or requirement long, complicated, overreaching, boil the ocean, and not really clearly written, then you can come back in later and ask for more money to clarify it. Or you can be hired by poor companies who are just trying to figure out what the heck does that mean. They're not neutral. They're not neutral necessarily. I'm not saying they're evil. I'm just saying people act in their economic interests. Businesses do that, consultants do that, everybody does that. Not a sin. Just be mindful of that. And really, you can't outsource your core mission. If you outsource something to the point you really don't understand, it's not anybody's business interest. So that's a concern, and and unfortunately, you end up with things that are not always as well thought out as you would like. You know, businesses have their own interests. I admit it. I'm kind of front and center, but at least most of us are honest about what those are, which kind of gets back to the promoting the public-private partnership. I put private first because there isn't always a lot of dialogue, and sometimes if there were, you could get to where you need to be faster. I'll give you one example. It's not about crypto, but it's still something that has given me gray hair, or would until I went to see my hairdresser. One particular document from NIST, again, I mean this respectfully, had to do with managing supply chain risk. And there was a particular, and it was excised from later versions, but in my opinion, this actually never should have been in there, the first draft, and wouldn't have been if industry had been consulted. And here was the requirement. It was the acquirer, that would be the government, wants to be notified of all personnel change involving maintenance. Think about what that means. Okay, we got thousands of products, thousands, billions of lines of code. Every day, lots of people check out code and they make a change to it and they check it back in after they test it. They didn't write that code. That's a personnel change involving maintenance. Thousands of the things a day. I'm thinking, what is that going to do for you? Am I going to tweet that to you? Okay, Jürgen in Munich checked out some code and checked it back in. The German Workers' Council is going to love that. We're telling the U.S. government who changed the code. What is that going to do? And what's my point to this? If you talk to industry first, that is, tell me what you're worried about. What are you worried about? And then figure out whether it's actually even feasible for businesses. Because if we do that, there's a bunch of other stuff we won't be doing that is better, that serves you better in security. I can't do everything. So, you know, part of this partnership is having a dialogue. And the dialogue starts with, you know, what are you worried about? What are the possible solutions? What's economically feasible? And what you want is something that is, you can't get to perfect, but you can get to better. And better is achievable, and you want better to be achievable even for these innovative companies. Otherwise, you have a much smaller pool of suppliers, and that's probably not in most people's interest either. You know, government typically likes multiple suppliers, not just, you know, the big guys. It's part of the way that taxpayer revenue gets distributed. We buy from a lot of people, not just big guys, and that's actually a good thing, and it helps foster innovation. So I never use the word one world order, so that's why it's in quotations. Just back to point 2. And it means when you do make changes or you make clarifications, spending the time to explain it to industry instead of just putting it out is probably time well spent, because that's part of that dialogue. Well, we thought we were only doing X, but we didn't understand the ramifications. Just like, frankly, I wouldn't understand the ramifications a lot of goes on in government agencies. I might think, oh, so-and-so should be able to do such and such. But I don't really know because I haven't been in that environment. That's why you have a dialogue. So I know that goes both ways. Lastly, one world order. Yeah, it is better than balkanization. I know that it will probably be very difficult to get to the same kind of common, you know, what was formerly the common criteria recognition arrangement. It's been a little balkanized now. It's been a lot balkanized now, unfortunately. But I do laud the move toward ISO. That's great. I know because I was just in Asia last week, there are going to be governments who want their own little crypto implementation. They're not going to accept the algorithms everybody else uses. I understand that. But the more that they can have commonality where you do one thing that counts multiple places, that one good thing. So I use my resource on one good thing that other people will accept because they know it's been properly vetted and tested. That's better for all of us. Then we can take our good security weenies and developers and all the other people we have, labs, and spend them on other things that will also be valuable. And frankly, it's one of the ways we will get to more, frankly, more FIPS FIPS products, is that we will do one thing that matters. So thank you for the work you've already done on that. I'm very appreciative of that. And I think that's all I had, and I'm done with the blather for the day. But I'm happy to take questions. Yes.
It's not so much a question, but rather a kind of a comment to your...
He's there. He just needs to step up a little. Go ahead.
Okay. It's not so much a question, but rather a comment to the first part of your presentation about the crypto aspects. I actually agree wholeheartedly with what you said, with one exception. You mentioned that in our current environment, kind of the best solution, best crypto solution will prevail. And I have to admit that this is not correct at these days, at least in software. Almost every company uses OpenSSL these days. And all what you said applies to OpenSSL. So we have a kind of a monoculture in OpenSSL. So and the problem is, or at least companies have to ask themselves, why do we use OpenSSL considering there are projects like LibreSSL, that means where the OpenBSD group said OpenSSL cannot be used. Second, other people, important people in the Linux community, when I quote them, say OpenSSL shall be just nuked from orbit and forgotten about. So.
Well, I hope I didn't say that I thought that was the best solution, because I wasn't trying to pick winners. So I apologize if I've left you. What I was trying to do is not. I don't want to damn open source. It's just that, you know, when you work in a development environment, you have people who are near rapturous, like, it is about the community, praise the Lord, it's all about open source. Okay, you know, again, it's not a religious issue. We use a lot of different libraries. We're actually pushing the company. Well, I guess what I didn't get to is, well, I want to know where everything's being used. Some of our groups, the Blessed Solaris group, some of whom are sitting over there, they actually moved to reduce their libraries already. I mean, we don't need 5 SSH implementations, for Pete's sake, right? Get down to one thing. We're going to have to FIPS certify. It's actually cheaper for the company, and all those other factors are part of it. So I'm not picking winners and losers. I'll tell you, as I said, it's a business decision. So years ago, I was a product manager for database security, and we were trying to get down to one library, and we had some OpenSSL, and we had some, I think it was Certicom. So it was a business analysis, okay, and this was at that time. So I haven't done this analysis recently. I can't speak for it. So at the time, Certicom had 40 libraries. OpenSSL had 400. Okay, more compact. We like that. Certicom had done some work to optimize the performance for enterprise software, so it performed better. So we like that. They gave us nice bundled, well-tested patches instead of throwing stuff over the wall randomly. So it was not about, you know, the religious aspects of open versus, it was the business driver of compact libraries, reliable patching, you know, blah, 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 and they'd had a FIPS certification. So a bunch of things we looked at, and that's the kind of analysis people need to do. I agree with you, monoculture creates its own problem. So there is an argument to saying, well, don't just have one of something. On the other hand, if you have 18 of something, you know it's not going to be, then you have other problems like, if we have to do a patch, now we've got to patch 18 libraries and keep track of them, and from the customer standpoint, well, I don't know anybody who just runs on, you know, maybe one operating system. If they have one of everything, then they got to hire people who can manage, you know, I don't know, an Oracle database, an IBM database, a Microsoft database, whatever. So that creates cost for them. There isn't a perfect answer to me, but it really gets to whatever you use has got to meet somebody's security needs, surely, but some of those are business needs. So I'm sorry if I left the impression. It's not my job to pick winners and losers in the marketplace. The marketplace does that really well. But when we analyze these things, I definitely want to get to, I want to know where everything is. I don't want 12 of something. I want fewer libraries that are secure, and we have better practices in place, so if there's a problem, we can address them more quickly. I think everybody who's a vendor is probably in the same boat. Nobody else? You're all afraid of me. All right. Thanks very much, and thank you, Fiona, for such a lovely introduction.
Okay, everybody, so thank you very much, Marianne, and thank you to Helmut